Coming to you from New York City, it's the Friars Club Podcast. Established in 1904, the Friars Club is the birthplace of the celebrity roast and has counted the likes of Frank Sinatra, Jimmy Fallon, Billy Crystal, Barbra Streisand, and Johnny Carson among its members. So come on in for a drink and some laughs with your host, Joe Sibilia.
Hello and welcome to the Friars Club Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Sibilia, and today I have the distinct pleasure of talking with an icon of motion pictures, television, stand-up comedy, and the Broadway stage, most recently with Mr. Saturday Night. Would you please welcome Billy Crystal? Billy, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you. Nice to be here, Joe.
Pleasure to have you. So, Billy, I want to start off by asking, how exactly did you come to be involved with the Friars Club?
I had a feeling you were going to ask, and I'm not sure exactly how it started, but a lot of it was with my relationship with Alan King. We did a film together called Memories of Me, and we would often meet at the Friars, and it was always, he was the Friars to me. He was an incredible comedian, a brilliant man, and loved the camaraderie of the club and its history, and really valued that he was such a part of it for so long. And little by little, I just, I learned so much from Alan about comedy and about how important it is to all of us, especially now when, as things get hard and tough for people's lives, that I can feel it on Broadway with, doing a show and still in the middle of a pandemic, how important it is for people to enjoy themselves and laugh and get away from life for a couple hours. And that's what comedy, does. And besides pointing a light at the hypocrisies of the world. And Alan taught me so much about that and his love of the history. And it just was infectious to me.
Now, when you were growing up, would you watch Alan King on television, on the Ed Sullivan Show, on Johnny Carson? Was he somebody that you idolized way back when you were young, or did you only come to know him later in your life?
Oh, no, I saw it started young, Joe, because I grew up in the greatest era for comedy. If you wanted to learn how to be funny, there were so many different great comedians. Usually on weeknight television, you had Burns and Allen, you had Jack Benny, you had the Honeymooners, Gleason and Carney, you had Ernie Kovacs and Steve Allen, and the great Jack Parr would feature Jonathan Winters all the time. And then Sunday nights was Ed Sullivan, and Sullivan would have at least two comics on every Sunday night, and Allen was one of them. And I remember as a kid watching him coming out, because he was always so crisp in his approach, and he had a great character. He just was annoyed by life and would tell these wonderful stories with great charm. And I always thought of how classy he was. I just sort of understood it right from the beginning. And he was just a very classy guy. So and a wonderful comedian. He had extraordinary timing. Anyone listening, I urge you to go to YouTube and watch Alan King on any shows, especially there's a great Letterman appearance where he does his classic Survived by His Wife. Of the monologists, he was really extraordinary.
Then it truly must have been surreal when in 1992 you were roasted by the Friars Club and Alan King was there among others. Gary Shandling, Robin Williams, Buddy Hackett, your close friend Rob Reiner was the roast master.
Yeah.
Now, when you're going into a roast, whether you're being roasted or you're participating in the roast, as you did with a roast for Alan King and Rob Reiner, how do you prepare for that roast?
Well, you're going to get beat up. So, and even though they always say, well, it's meant with love, there's still body shots there, And, it was especially interesting to me and satisfying because the night before the roast was the premiere of Mr. Saturday Night at the Ziegfeld Theater. And it was a spectacular premiere. It was just everyone who was going to roast came, and they all would watch my character and say, "That's not me. That's not me. That's not me." And in fact, it's little pieces of all of them in many ways. And to share my love of those incredible comics with them and be on the stage with them was amazing. So that you're going to get when you have your chance to fight back and you get your 4 or 5 minutes, whatever, you got to score big. That was the pressure, was writing something and coming up with something that was really funny, that hopefully would top what was said about me, and in some cases my family as well.
Yeah.
So it was really a special night. It was a huge turnout. The dais itself was insane. And the backstage photographs I have of everybody from, Alan and Buddy and Pat Cooper and all the other great comedians. But then there was Kevin Costner and Bob Costas, and George Lucas was there. And I went, what is he doing there? But it was the allure of what the roasts were. Before they started to be televised, it was a sacred thing to get invited to. It was such an honor and a we're getting to see something so special, and no one else gets to see it but those of us who can get into the doors of the roast, and that made it even more magical. And it was a glorious afternoon.
So 2 things in response to that. You mentioned your family, and I know your mother was in the audience that night along with your wife. Was that uncomfortable at all after the fact? They used, obviously, some bawdy language at a Friars roast. Did your mother have a good sense of humor about that?
Well, my mom was amazing. My mom, rest her soul, was and had one of the great lines of the night. It was a rough joke. Alan was talking about playing my father, and Rob noticed it and mentioned it in a joke, saying, "Here's Alan King, who played Billy's father, and he wanted it to be realistic. So before the movie started shooting, Alan had sex with his mother." I'm saying it kindly. So then Alan gets up and says, "Yes, I did. And how was it, Mrs. Crystal?" And my mother stood up and said, "Don't get me started."
It's a great line.
It was Buddy's, it was Buddy's hook, but so that made me so proud. We as a family were really, privileged, because my dad was in the music business, and my uncle was a friar, and who produced some great records, from Strange Fruit, Billie Holiday, to Rock Around the Clock with Bill Haley, legendary guy. And so we were around great jazz musicians, and we were around great personalities, and whether they be singers or comics or something. So we were around it, but when you're inside those doors and they close them and the language is flying, it's something else. And I to this day, I marvel at how she was able to enjoy it and also come up with a line right off the top of her head sitting there. It was kind of thrilling. Yeah.
I remember in your rebuttal, you had a great line about Rob Reiner. I think it was something about him being Sebastian Cabot's stunt double.
Oh, yes. When we were, we were shooting When Harry Met Sally, and we were doing the orgasm scene at Katz's Deli, and Rob was showing Meg what he wanted, and so he sat down opposite me, and he played the scene with me, and I felt like, oh my God, he's having an orgasm, fake, or he's showing Meg what he wants.
Yeah.
And I said, boy, I feel like I'm on a date with Sebastian Cabot.
Talking about the Friars Club, you can't talk about the Friars Club without talking about your Broadway show. As of the date we're recording this, you're appearing in Mr. Saturday Night, and I got to see it over the weekend, and it was a phenomenal, phenomenal show, and really just a total love letter to the Friars Club. When you do the whole timing musical number where you're in the Friars Club, and for people who may or may not have seen the show, the backdrops are largely done. You have the video monitors, and you show pictures of all the great friars. There was Buddy Hackett up there, Johnny Carson, you name it, they were up there. How have the younger people who've been coming to see the show been reacting to it, and have they been able to connect in a way with this era of show business?
Oh yeah, that's an interesting question, Joe. Because at the end of the night, when I'm on my way home, I spend time with fans outside and sign autographs for those who were asking for them, and I ask them questions, and why'd you come? But because they're it's an older themed show, and we're getting more and more young people, which is very exciting. And they all said, because they were fans of mine, but also they loved the history that they were watching. They wanted to know who those people were, and they got it, and we were very grateful to the Friars for supplying Scott Pask, our set designer, with the photographs that we needed. So the wall recreation behind us is, pretty much what was in the dining room there. And so that's a great thing. And I have a quick change at the very end of the timing number. And I listen for the applause as I'm getting dressed for the next scene. And each time the number ends, more so lately, it's getting a huge amount of applause and screams and yells, because it's so respectful. And it's so, they get it. They get that they just got a chance to see a little bit of history up there as well, and with the affection that we give it,
It really is a very loving tribute to the Friars, as the film is. And I was watching some of the outtakes that you did with Jerry Lewis when you were filming the scene in the Friars Club. Now, as a younger director and a comic, was it at all intimidating to be directing somebody who's considered to be the great director comic of all time?
Well, yeah. I mean, I had a little bit of a relationship with him. I called him personally. He was very honored to be part of it. He loved, what the scene that he was going to be in and what I asked him to do. And he was able to even poke fun at himself. And he loved being there with Slappy White and Carl Ballantyne. And he was special. And, a true giant. And when you're saying to him, I need to do this, let's do that, he didn't hesitate. He was so respectful and helpful. And it was an honor to spend a little bit of time with him. What he accomplished as a young man and the power that he had and how funny he was, it was great to be, let into the club, so to speak.
When you hosted the Oscars, you've hosted the Oscars 9 times. Did you go back and look at some of the Friars, Bob Hope, Johnny Carson, who hosted it, and sort of see what they did to inform what you were going to do? And I'm curious to know, how did you devise the format that you were going to use for your turns as the host? Because you really did come up with a great concept for what the show should be. How did that come into being? What was your role in the writing? And did you study some of the past hosts when you're going into that?
No, I didn't. I looked at the clips, a couple here and there, but I remembered watching them, and I didn't want to be influenced because I knew that I was going to do something different. And I didn't, as wonderful as Bob was, my God, what did he do it 18 times? 19
I think
times? 19 and Johnny. I needed to make it my own, and we needed to find, how do we do different things? Now, I had hosted the Grammys 3 years prior to doing the Oscars, and also, had shared the hosting responsibilities with Robin and Whoopi for Comic Relief. So I had a different kind of way that I knew I wanted to approach it. Bob and Johnny were just awesome monologists, and I knew that I wanted to do something different and expand the role of what the host could do, and relying on what I had done when I hosted the Grammys, and I'd done some conceptual things, and definitely on Comic Relief. So we, just in kicking around stuff, we came up with a way to, what if it was a year after the Rough Show with Rob Lowe and singing to Snow White, and people didn't want any more musical numbers and so on and so forth. So I said to the brilliant Mark Shaman and Bruce Valanche, well, what if we do a number we claim is not a musical number, and since they don't want one, let's do it anyway, and let's do a funny montage of the songs and maybe do our own musical tribute that way, and it became the Oscar medley that we did. And that became such a joy to do, was to find, funny ways to poke fun at the films and also honor them at the same time. And then we stretched a little further and said, what if I was in the nominated films? And then we found a way to, basically shoot the other side of the set. So when it was, let's see, The Graduate, I was Mrs. Robinson. If on and on and on and on. When Leo DiCaprio spits off the top of the Titanic, I end up getting it in the face. So on, and it just became such a joy to do, and such a exciting thing for the audience to experience, because no one had done that before on the Oscars. And I used to love sometimes, because the Oscars were on Monday then, that I'd see local newscasters saying, well, we're going to end early if we can, because we want to get in the car and get home and make sure we see what Billy's going to do on the opening of the show. That's how powerful it got back then. And that was really exciting times, was to take the host job and stretch it. So it became a real entertainment, because basically, you want to keep the audience happy, because after the first hour, or so, 4 out of every 5 people of the nominees has lost. So you're actually talking to a bunch of people who aren't happy, and they're hungry, and they're in uncomfortable clothes. So you want to entertain them at the same time.
Now, you were always the consummate host on the Academy Awards, and you had the opportunity to guest host The Tonight Show a number of times, and I went back and watched them, and you were very, very good. I'm curious to know, was hosting a late-night show ever an opportunity you were approached about, or was that ever something that you had any interest in pursuing?
Well, I only did it twice, and it was nerve-wracking at the time. I thought it was okay. I thought it was good, but I wish I could do it now, because I know I could do it. I think hosting those shows is an incredible talent. That to do it. Listen, I do a Broadway show, 7 times a week, and they do their shows 5 nights a week. To be fresh and funny and interested in who you're talking to, and a monologue and a comedy piece. I think, Jimmy, the 2 Jimmys and Stephen Colbert and James, it's an amazingly difficult job. And I was approached about it a couple of times. Once by CBS before David came over there, and then by Fox. They made a very hard push, and I was really interested about 10 or 15 years ago. And I was really interested, but I said, well, how many weeks? And it was 48 weeks. And I just felt I don't think I have the stamina to do that, when I still wanted to direct more and act more and so on. So I did turn it down. But yeah, that was an interesting kind of dilemma that I was interested in doing it at that point. Now,
you, of course, appeared on The Tonight Show many times, and obviously you had your experience guest hosting The Tonight Show. What kind of a relationship did you have with Johnny Carson, who was, of course, a famous friar for many, many years, or was roasted by the Friars? What was it like to get to know Johnny over the years?
I'm not sure if I ever got to know Johnny. Until the very end of his run, I was always in awe of him. the first time I did the show, and I got called over to the couch on my first appearance, and I just, in a commercial break, I just sort of was staring at him while he's playing his, his pencils with it, drumming with a band. He was such an iconic superstar to me, and so helped to ignite, my comedy chops, because I just found him just so great. And there I was with him. And then later in his career, it was after I did SNL and came back with more muscle personally, and that we started to have a better relationship. I got this phone call from him. It almost still moves me to tears. It was after the '98 Oscars, which was a particularly good show, and I was really on that night, and it was one of them I'm more proud of. It's actually to this day the highest rated show the Oscars has ever had, but that's not the reason why. I was pretty sharp that night, and early in the morning, my assistant calls at like 9:00, and I first got in at 5, and I wouldn't sleep anyway because your mind races through what just happened. And she said, Johnny Carson's on the phone. And I said, oh, is it Marty Short? Is it Chris Guest? Who's what? No, she said, no, it's him. And I broke into a sweat like Albert Brooks in broadcast news. And I went, hello. And he went on and on about how much he loved what I had done. And he said, and all of them that you've done, I just couldn't have been more complimentary. And it was to this moment, it's one of those, I'm right up there. There's 2 moments. I got to play catch with Mickey Mantle at Cooperstown, and I got a phone call from Johnny Carson saying, you were really terrific. That meant everything to me. And then when the movie I directed for HBO called 61 about Maris and Mantle debuted on HBO, I get a call from Johnny. I'm sending you something I want you to take a look at. No one has seen this in years. Let me know when you get it. He sent me a DVD of Johnny 1962 at Yankee Stadium pitching to Mickey Mantle. He's in full uniform. It was a comedy bit that they were doing for the Tonight Show when it was still in New York. And it's a wonderful piece of video. And he said, I just wanted you to have that. It's pretty amazing. And then we spoke after he had his, I guess it was a quadruple bypass, and his health wasn't good. And we made a plan to get together, and then sadly he passed away. But those moments of Rodney used to say, just give me one of these, just give me one of those. And I got one. I got a couple of them from Johnny, and that was amazing.
How did you come up with the concept to do the Joe Franklin bits on SNL? Those are some of my favorites. Now, you're probably wondering how a 26-year-old knows who Joe Franklin is, but that's besides the point. How did those come to be? Because they were just some of the funniest things I think
first of all, the Joe Franklin show was on longer than you're alive. For your listeners who may or may not know, Joe Franklin had a talk show called Memory Lane. It was on WOR Channel 9 for, I think, 40 years. And he would have, is it obscure guests or I don't know, people on the edge of movie business or the edge of show business or rising stars or faded stars. And then he would show film clips and narrate them and they would listen to music while the camera just panned them. He would play these obscure songs. And so when I came to SNL, I used to imitate him, for friends who knew him. And he would do these ultra long lead-ins to the film clips. Let's take a look now as we roll the clock back and drop the needle on this bit of music coming your way right now by beverages by Hoffman, Lively Carbonation, and matzahs by Streitz. And so when we did it, the key to it was really writing a boring 6-minute show that became very funny. So it was all about the guests. So the wonderful Chris Guest one time played a ventriloquist named Senor Cotha, who was a Castilian ventriloquist who would do the TH sound for the, I don't know, Marty Short played several different characters. Doug Henning one time, Chris played Alan Arkin one time, and whoever the guest host was would come and join us. The great George Carlin joined us, Liberace joined us, and it was just a joy to do. And the more we did it, the more free matzah I got from Streitz.
I encourage anybody listening to go on YouTube and look up the clip of you and Joe on his 40th anniversary special, because it's really something to behold.
40 years he's been sitting and spritzing, sitting and talking, sitting and nadling and schmelling with the greats, the near greats, the ne'er-do-wells, the good people. I've had the young, the old, the Weird Al Yankovic, the kids in the tight pants with their hair, the guitars, the things. I've seen it all. I've had it. I've smelled it. I've touched it. And you know what? It's fun. It's fun.
You've given it a thumbnail description.
A thumbnail, a thumb nose, a thing, a touch, a hangnail. I like this business. I love it. It's my life. Can you say show business is your life, Joe?
And may you live as long as you want, and may you never want as long as you live.
To wrap things up, you're the 2018 Friars Club Entertainment Icon Award recipient. You have a room named for you at the Friars Club in the Monastery. How does it feel to be a part of this great organization after all these years, and why do you think the Friars Club still endures?
Well, there's still an aura about it, and the club has had some troubles in recent years, but past them now, and new blood is coming in with that same idea of the camaraderie and the humor and the history of the club. They love coming into the iconic building. It's funny, when I first became a member and had the roast, it was, I don't know, I was 40, I guess. I don't know. Now I'm the same age Alan King was when he got up on a dais and insulted my mother. So, so I think it's a great thing that it's it was an honor to be part of the award. When you look at the other the history of people who've gotten that award, it was a very special night. And raised a lot of money, and that was a good thing. So I encourage people to, come to the club and start your own stories. Start telling your own stories now, and keep a new history going that people in the future will love to experience too.
Well, coming from somebody who, as a kindergartner, was wearing the Mike Wazowski costume, all I can say is this is truly an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to be talking with you here on the Friars Club Podcast. So I thank you, and if you're about to go, let me just remind you, Hoffman Beverages, Martin Paints, it ain't just paint.
It ain't just paints. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crystal. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Joe. Take care of yourself.
Thanks for listening to the Friars Club Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. For more information on the Friars Club, please visit friarsclub.com. We hope to see you there.